Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to episode 10 of Give Freedom a Chance, the podcast from the Libertarian Party UK. I'm your host, Luca Bocci. I am a member of the Libertarian Party, been a journalist since 1990, but I'm so happy that you chose to spend part of your Saturday afternoon with us discussing politics and how to turn Britain into a freer country, a country that is more in line with libertarian thinking. So again, the 10th episode, so obviously is a little milestone for us. We've started a few months ago and we're struggling to get things going, but hopefully you enjoy this conversation we're having every Saturday. We'll try to stick to our schedule. Today we will be discussing, the title is, it's a bit of a wishful thinking and stuff to say Britain's future is libertarian. But in reality, we really think that this country only has a future if it goes back to libertarian thinking, which is part of the foundation of the culture of these islands. So we will try to think how to engage young people, because nowadays, I think the only people that look into the young people are just the Green parties with their lunacy, and then ultra-left politicians, and then people who look into all sorts of ridiculous thinking. So we are trying to have a conversation with a couple of people that are very much involved in day-to-day politics, and so having constituencies and discussing things with local people, especially young people. So the introduction has been too long, so I'll just let all the other people that I have, I'll turn on their microphones, because otherwise it would be really annoying. So let me welcome everyone. Let me welcome Alex Zikowski, leader of the Libertarian Party UK. Thank you for being here, Alex.
Good afternoon, Luca.
And again, we're having the candidate for the Libertarian Party UK. Not only that, but he's the coordinator for the north part of England, is Dan Clark, and he will be running for the Libertarian Party UK in the by-election that is coming up in a few days actually. Hi, Dan.
The 26th, yeah. So it's not too far away now.
Okay, that's absolutely lovely for you to take in the time off your very busy campaigning schedule for being here with us. But also we have a very special guest. He's a young fellow, I might say, but he's very much experienced into what he's doing. So it's Mr. Ralph Farrow. Thank you for being here. You may not have heard of him, but he's been making some waves with his website and his podcast. That is The Young Politician, which is very, very strange, because nowadays we don't hear about young politicians. If you look at Westminster and stuff, most of the time is very old people, actually older than me. So thanks for being here, Ralph.
Thank you very much for having me, Luca.
Okay, lovely. So again, we wanted to have a conversation and say, if you look at British politics nowadays, things have been going 100 miles a second, because every 5 minutes there is something that is happening. So the Mendelssohn scandal, so the rape gang inquiry by Rupert Lowe, and then Advance UK and Restore UK, they're just joining forces, and then Nigel Farage is doing something very stupid about saying, oh, you should get back to the office, when people are finding it really, really hard to just pay for a commute and everything. So the politicking is going on 100 miles a second, but in reality, no one is really looking at what are the real issues that people are facing. And I'm thinking, Dan, when you are talking with people day to day while you're doing campaigning in your constituency, I'm thinking that not a lot of people are really worried about if Rupert Lowe will go along with Nigel Farage, or if Ben Habib is this or this and that. This is stuff that only worries the people in the Westminster bubble. Real people, I think they're having much more pressing issues. Don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. People are more concerned about, the cost of living, getting jobs, obviously having investment actually pumped into the community. In parts of the constituency, there is high levels of unemployment. So people are more concerned about, getting unemployment down, actually just being able to pay the bills. So they're not worrying about what a group of middle-aged men down in Westminster are saying, and they've certainly not got any time for Farage. demanding people to get back to the office when he spends very little time in his own constituency of Clacton. So yeah, that I've been hearing is that people are more concerned about being able to find work, get a job, and just everyday struggles.
Yeah, I think the real issue is that the up until a few years ago, if you were talking about politicians seem to have the pulse of the nation because they will always spend a lot of time in their constituency. So their office wasn't just to just give a job paid by the taxpayers to a friend of theirs, or maybe their wife or their cousin or whatever, because we all know how things goes. Local offices, constituency offices of people that are elected in Westminster, most of the time are just a front, or they just hire people who are friendly to them. Maybe, I don't know, the son of someone who has given a contribution to their campaign. So it's not exactly on top of their priority. Nowadays, I think that they are so completely detached. And now, I don't know if, Ralph, if you have seen something similar, especially with young people. From the way I see it, I've been writing about politics for a long time. And I don't recall ever seeing a political class that is so completely out of touch with whatever is going on in the real country, in the real nation. What is your point of view?
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there, Luca. I think what we've seen over the past 10 days to 2 weeks with this whole Mandelson saga is truly extraordinary. We've seen the Prime Minister exercise incredibly questionable, to put it lightly, judgment about appointing the best pal of a convicted paedophile, the world's most notorious paedophile, to our highest diplomatic post. I mean, I don't know if you guys would be in that position of offering somebody a job, but if you received a CV and on the CV was best pal with the world's most notorious paedophile, then I certainly would go, no thank you, go home, do a Farage, go and work from home. I don't want to talk to you ever again, not associating with you. But somehow the Prime Minister thought it was a good decision to appoint him in that diplomatic post. And I think that reveals something stark about our political class, that certain individuals seem to believe that they are not accountable to the people that vote them in. And I think Starmer got caught out there, not because he was a good, honourable, decent man who made the right decision. He got caught out because people actually found out about what he did. So we had that forensic questioning from Kemi Badenoch at Prime Minister's Questions that was able to withdraw that answer that actually, yes, he did know that Jeffrey Epstein or Peter Mandelson continued his relationship with the world's most notorious paedophile. He received that in the briefing documents and actually went ahead and appointed him anyway. Truly extraordinary. So you've got people, I think, certainly I hope a commonly shared opinion, that would look at that and go, that is the most horrific exercise in judgment that perhaps I've ever seen from a Prime Minister, and a terrible scandal, the worst in my lifetime, absolutely. And we have people at the top of our political class that think it's perfectly acceptable to get somebody like that in a position of authority. And I think that's what really turns people off politics. There's a feeling, I think Dan touched on this, that they're not focused on the key issues of the day. They're focused on infighting, squabbling, talking about internal battles, whether Andy Burnham's going to stand, what Wes Streeting, Andrew Rayner going to do. When people out there are struggling on a tremendously slow growing economy, and growing is a welcome word, but it's not growing very well because of the Labour government's decisions. People out there are really struggling, and the government doesn't seem like they're focusing on the most important issues of the day. They're focusing on the friendship with the world's most notorious paedophile, and it has had an extraordinary cut through as well. About I think 45% of people said they were watching the story fairly closely or very closely. So that's going to dribble down, I think, and that's what feeds into the dissatisfaction with this Labour government. After they said they were going to be purer than the driver snow, then they were going to be whiter than white, that Keir Starmer's whole pitch was, I'm Mr. Honourable, I'm Mr. No Tolerance to Sleaze. And he comes in, he has the freebie scandal, and he has what's happened with Peter Mandelson. So I think politicians got to get back in touch with what people are actually thinking, deal with the issues, get forward, deliver the ballot, whether you think it's right or wrong, and actually get on with the job.
Apparently, the adults being back in the room involves a lot more scandal than we were thinking, because we were assuming, wrongly apparently, that before appointing someone to the most prestigious position in the diplomatic corps, which is being the ambassador in Washington, which to this day is still the biggest ally of the United Kingdom, you will at least wait for the vetting process to be completed, while instead, from people who have been in Downing Street, 10 Downing Street, and very close to the Starmer bot, as I like to call him, no, he had already decided. He couldn't care less about the vetting process. So even if they did find out, he said, no, he's the right guy for the job. And on top of that, there is another thing that not many people are talking about, is that Peter Mandelson was instrumental in selecting the candidates. So now the 430 people that are in Westminster now have been selected by Peter Mandelson. So I don't know about you, Alex, because right now this seems to be the perfect storm. And not many people are talking about the fact that right now Ed Miliband is still going strong, and the solar things, the solar farms and wind farms and whatever, they are still having contracts. They are paid 4 times the market price for the production of electricity, no matter if they produce electricity or not. And obviously, every single family in the UK, every single business in the UK is going to pay very dearly for that, because the UK has got the highest price in industrial electricity pretty much on the planet. And these things keep going on, which is why I don't think he will leave the prime minister post anytime soon. So what can we do to make people go back to thinking about proper things, real things? And even if, nowadays I look at all the problems that the UK is having, and I think that libertarian solutions are very well suited to tackle most of them, if not all of them. I don't know. Am I missing something?
No, absolutely. As both Ralph and Dan have said, the average person on the street, they are preoccupied with their wallet, how they're going to pay the bills, put food on the table for their children. And the beauty of libertarianism is that there is, evidence-based practice shows that letting the market run the economy puts money back in people's pockets. I just wanted to touch on the whole saga with Mandelson and Starmer just one more moment to put out a little sympathy for Anas Sarwar, the Labour leader in Scotland. I felt quite sorry for him the day after. So he came out and said that enough is enough, Starmer should resign. And my suspicion is he had 1 or 2, 3 maybe other people in his WhatsApp chat who promised to do the same and backed out at the last minute, because I can't see why anyone would stick their head over the parapet like that on their own.
No. And I think the leader of Labour Wales had called for a press conference, and then there was a meeting inside of 10 Downing Street with the parliamentarian group of the Labour, where pretty much Keir Starmer went there and shouted in their faces, "Stop this, otherwise I'm calling for a general election. You will all lose your job." So he pulled the nuclear option, but I don't really think so. Obviously, it was not very well conceived as a takeover and stuff, but I don't think it's going to last very long, because you don't pull the nuclear option if you already have other cards in your hand. I mean, he was at his wit's end. This is my take. I don't know, Alex, what is your position?
Yes, he appears to be clinging on with his fingernails, which makes it all the more outrageous that the Labour Party, the Parliamentary Labour Party, have been unable to get rid of him. The scandal is to such an extent that he's lost all legitimacy. And the fact that they can't get rid of him suggests either he's using a general election, like you said, as a nuclear weapon, which is quite frankly an insult to democracy. We'd love an election. And he's telling fellow politicians that they're all going to lose their seats. So he obviously is aware of the weakness of his position, but he can't quite seem to realize that the common factor in all of this is himself, Keir Starmer. Why is the Labour Party so unpopular? It's largely down to the leadership. So it's the whole situation is a farce. But we have to ask ourselves, if they did manage to get rid of him, I think part of the reason why the coup never happened is that, you know, splits over who would take over. So I imagine a lot of Labour MPs are now kicking themselves that Andy Burnham wasn't allowed to stand at Gorton and Denton, so he's off the cards. And then, you know, you've got options such as, you know, Lammy and Rayner, both of who are, you know, just as awful as Keir Starmer. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see. He's going to hang on for a few more months, I'm sure. But when we come to the May elections, so first of all, they will lose Gorton and Denton. The bookies have Greens as quite strong favourites at the moment. Reform could do it, but it won't be Labour. They've lost it already. I mean, Dan and I saw that on the streets up there. There's plenty of Reform placards, plenty of Green placards. I spoke to one person in an afternoon who said they were voting Labour, and this is supposed to be in the red wall. So, you know, libertarian options, you know, they were quite welcome. Many people hadn't heard of us, but, you know, you mentioned energy, Luca. Not everyone quite grasps just quite how integral to the whole economy energy is, and it's not simply sitting at home trying not to freeze to death, but all of our industry relies on affordable energy. We don't export anything, not just because we've deindustrialized, but we're now slapping on top of that the highest energy prices in the world, and it's impossible to produce anything at a profit in this country. You know, Ralph was saying, you know, we've received growth in the last quarter. That's to be welcome. 0.1% GDP growth. It's not keeping pace with the population growth. You know, GDP per capita is what we should be looking at. If you have mass immigration and your population and your GDP is increasing by 0.1% in a quarter, your economy is not growing. We've not seen any real growth in this country for the best part of 2 decades. So the libertarian way is we need to go Thatcher on steroids, cut public spending massively, cut taxation, return money to people's pockets.
Yeah, I know this is another thing that not many people are saying, especially if you look at America. Let's not look at Argentina, because Argentina is a libertarian wet dream, where we see all the things that we've been talking for ages. They've been implemented and they're having massive results. But just look at America. I just looked at the graph that was saying that the federal government employs the least amount of people for 50 years. And this has happened just because they just stopped hiring people, stopped giving consultancy jobs and everything. And so this is what is happening, and the situation is getting a little bit better. In terms of energy, I don't know, I would advise everyone that is looking, and maybe all of you, to look at the price of the carbon exchange in Europe, because this has happened. There's been talks of the European Union, the Commission, saying, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have this whole ridiculous thing, this massive scam that is pushing prices up to the roof. And so just talking about reforming it meant that the price of this carbon exchange, whatever, just dropped like a stone in Germany and Italy. Not in France or Spain, but Germany and Italy just dropped like a stone. So we can see that the prices for electricity to be delivered in 2027, they're already down 20%. And this is just because the government is intervening so heavily, is pushing so hard on the scale, that the prices that we are paying is not because of the market, the war, the instability or everything. No. It's all government related. And I don't know, Ralph, is it possible to just convey these ideas to young people? Because nowadays it seems very esoteric to think that, to say, because they think that they've been taught for most of their lives that government is good, and the more the government does, the better, which in reality doesn't really work this way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think young people have fundamentally been sold an incredibly one-sided vision of politics. I can use my own schooling as an example. We had some form of political education in the place that I was educated at, and the political education that we got was not down the middle, presenting two sides, trying to understand different perspectives. It was very much, you're this side and we're not going to give you an opportunity to speak if you're the opposition. I remember one point being told by one of my teachers that I was too anti-communist in my essays that I was writing, which I thought was quite amusing, and another one that called Rishi Sunak a scumbag, and another one that said that Keir Starmer was doing a great job as Prime Minister. So it was incredibly one-sided, the way that it was positioned to us. So young people have, in some sense, been captured by the educational institutions when they are constantly being told that there's only one perspective, and if you deviate from that perspective, you're actually an outlier, and being an outlier by definition is a bad thing in those institutions. I think the second point that I would make on young people being sold this vision is social media. I don't think many libertarian or right-wing politicians have really captured social media as much as the left. I think people like Zach Polanski and Zora Mondani and people of those sort of political stripes have been extraordinarily impactful using social media, short, crisp video clips talking about the sort of socialist dream that they want to conjure up. Regardless of how logical the policies are, young people are very much admiring of that type of vision and the way that it's being conveyed to them. And then obviously there's a danger on the social media part that, especially with TikTok being controlled by the Chinese, that there could be some form of infiltration and misinformation that's imposed upon young people. So the West is constantly bashed, capitalism is a terrible system, and that's being fed directly to young people. So young people are getting one element of it, which is the schooling, telling them that actually bigger government is better, that government can solve all your problems, that you're not personally responsible for anything in your life. And then you've got social media, which is coming in and reinforcing that vision, perhaps at the behest of a foreign government as well. And I think the solution to that is people like you guys and perhaps right-wing economic figures actually have to utilize the channels that young people are using, rather than retreating back and saying, we just want to hope young people will pick up the newspaper and go down to their local news agents. It's just not going to work. It's not a sustainable strategy for young people. You need to go on social media, make the positive case for capitalism, and actually not concede to narratives of the left. Because if you start to concede to the left, they will increasingly gain control over you. They will gain control over the narrative. And frankly, at that point, you've lost. So you've got to get out there, make the case to young people about capitalism, and actually convince them, rather than sitting back and hoping somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah, I know, but the whole point is that selling a collectivist thing. Zora Mandani can go there and say, what is that? The iciness of individualism, and instead the warmth of collectivism. We've seen the warmth of collectivism in action pretty much in Cuba. In Cuba nowadays, the government is collapsing. Now that they don't have the Venezuelan oil keeping them afloat, they're shutting down everything. It's completely collapsing, and they're still selling the idea that it's all the Americans' fault. And then you look at them and say, well, no, maybe the fact that the Castro family has stolen something between 18 and 25 billion dollars might have something to do with it. So the whole point is that you don't have to just say our solutions are better and this is why. It's just that you have to go against what they have been fed for most of their life. And I think, Dan, this is particularly difficult, but it just baffles me because obviously I was not born in the UK. I've lived 10 years here in London, which is not exactly England, is something different. But it seems to me that the foundation of British culture and British civilization is very much rugged individualism. It's just the fact of saying, the government just let me do my thing. My house is my castle. I want to do everything. So I was just assuming, wrongly apparently, that libertarian ideals would be an easy sell, especially in the north of England. I don't know. What is your experience?
Well, yeah, you would think that just being left alone to live your life as you see fit, as long as you're not bothering anyone, would be an easy sell. But what I've learned with the left is that if you tell a lie enough times, in their eyes, it somehow becomes the truth. And unfortunately, as it was mentioned earlier, that like the Green Party and whatnot managed to do pretty well on social media, and it's having what they're coming out with is having a huge influence, particularly on our youth. It's how do you break this idea is that Green Party are basically just communists wrapped up in environmentalism. We've got to sing louder, I think, that, look, freedom is the way forward. Having more money in your pocket is better for you than the government taking out your wage packet and you not having any money left. We've just got to dig deep and literally sing louder than what the left are doing, and use this opportunity of what we're seeing with Labour at present and Starmer, that the left doesn't work. So, it's clear that Starmer is hanging on by fingernails, yet a man who clings to power is the worst person to have in power. And we've got to basically get the message across to say to people, the power should be held with the individual and not the state.
Yeah, I know. I think it's the whole point is that the whole technocratic idea is failing so hard in most countries that it's been tried on. So the whole idea was career politicians are bad because they're not real experts. But if you give power to someone that is very, very good at what it is, this whole technocracy thing, obviously they will find the best solutions and they will solve all the problems. And I don't know, just look at the last 20, 25 years. There was a direct comparison between what happened in Greece and what happened in Estonia. And it's quite clear. So 2008 crisis happened, and Greece, what does Greece do? They just go ahead, full Keynesian, massive public spending, massive subsidies, massive everything. No one is allowed to fail. Everything goes ahead. And so what happens? 25 years of crisis, massive depression, people fired, savings destroyed, everything goes off. What happened in Estonia? Same problem. They said, well, the banks have made the wrong choice. They will go bankrupt. 6 months, very bad situation. And then the economy kept going up. And now people are richer and the people are going great and it's solved all the problems. Greece still has problems. Poland did something similar. They said, well, okay, fine. This is a problem. We'll go with it. And again, it seems very counterintuitive because when there is a situation of crisis, you would want the government to do something, which is exactly the right moment when the government shouldn't be doing something. Because most of the time, when they do something, they just make a bigger mess. I don't know, Alex, it's this maybe because I don't seem to think how it's easy to just convey this message and saying there is a situation in crisis. Let's say there are not enough houses. We know in the UK it's impossible to get a house. Prices are through the roof. And they say, oh, the government should do something. Libertarian solution would be just stop people from doing what they want. So make it easier to get planning and to just build stuff. And then the market will regulate itself. But people would want, oh, you have to do something. You have to give incentives, which in itself is just distorting the market and making the problem worse. So, I don't know how is it possible to sell some idea like this?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned housing because quite literally this morning we just finalised our new housing policy. So that's quite exciting. That should be going on the website hopefully next week. And on that particular issue, if I may, we've had Patrick Schumacher, a world-renowned architect, helping us with that policy. And he obviously feels quite strongly on the topic through his line of work. And he's obviously been involved with a number of developments. He knows planning law in great depth. And this country has some of the most restrictive planning legislation of any country on earth. And the market cannot provide more homes with these restrictions in place. So, there's restrictions on the number of so-called affordable homes that you need in a development, regardless of the area in which it's being offered. There are restrictions on, if in a block of flats, there must be a certain number of studios, 1 beds, 2 beds, regardless of what the market wants. So you're having these houses built that nobody wants, these flats and these apartments. You have the Town and Country Planning Act and the Greenbelt restrictions as well. All of these things serve to stifle supply. You don't need the government involved because all they will do is reduce supply. And housing is incredibly unaffordable in this country, and that's one way we can push with the young people Is our housing policy bringing more supply into the market? If I could just go back to what we were talking about, the issue with the youth, social media and so on. The problem is, I'm going to put my teacher hat on here. They aren't reading enough. There has been a huge decline in reading for pleasure in this country over the last few decades, and children in particular are not being exposed to academic arguments or even just to literature. So they will see a TikTok video of a left-wing politician saying tax the rich, and they will lap it up and say, oh yes, because at that age you don't know any better, and they genuinely believe that we can fix all the world's problems by taxing the rich. If they were more well-read, they might be able to look at a graph. You mentioned the case study, Greece versus Estonia. It's just one of thousands. If we, inoculated a way of getting children to read more, to explore these issues themselves, then it's working out the correlation between free market capitalism and prosperity, as opposed to state intervention and deprivation. It's clear. It's a science. Economics is a science. The world obeys laws of physics, and the market does so as well. And as long as people are willing and able to do the science, then they will see the results.
Yeah, I know. One other thing that I was thinking in terms of is the reaction, the absolute knee-jerk reaction to the interview that Jim Ratcliffe, the owner of Ineos, gave to Sky News, I think a couple of days ago, with the whole idea of saying everybody was focusing on the sentence. He said, well, Britain is being colonized by migrants. And he said, and then he apologized and said, yeah, I chose the word poorly, but didn't backtrack on the fact that it's unsustainable to have a country where 9 million people are on benefits and where it just costs tens of billions of pounds a year. But not many people noticed the other bit in his interview where he said, if we don't stop with this net zero nonsense, we will not have, UK will not have plastics and petrochemical industry in the next few years. So you will lose another segment. So you lost automotive, where Britain was, world class. You've lost it. Now it's not there anymore. And now you're going to lose another big segment of society. You don't get natural gas from the North Sea. You then got oil from fracking because, God forbid, you import it from Norway, where they have a sovereign wealth fund that is 300 billion pounds or whatever. So I don't think this is really, really odd, because you're getting a knee-jerk reaction in saying, oh, you shouldn't say this. I think Konstantin Kissing put it very well in a tweet yesterday, where he said the British establishment says that the problem is never the problem. The problem is you noticing the problem, because things shouldn't be talked. This is particularly dysfunctional. I don't know, Ralph, what is the kind of reaction? Because I remember when I was 20-something, if people came to me and said, oh, you shouldn't be talking about this, maybe it's because I'm a contrarian, but I would be talking more about it. And I don't know, is this changed? It's now conformity is the new norm? Or because if I were, myself back in 1995, I will be all over it and say, oh, no, that's rubbish. He's right. And I don't know, maybe it's something changed.
Well, it's an interesting question, Luca, because that reaction that we received from Jim Ratcliffe's interview with Sky News did actually distract from the main point that he was trying to make about economics. That one sentence was to be able to sort of be withdrawn, and then there was sort of rolling live news broadcasts on BBC for some really odd reason, because that's the most important thing that's going on in the world right now. It's a fascinating sentence, colonized by immigrants. I think probably the choice of words was inappropriate, but I think the general thrust of the argument is absolutely correct. It is perfectly logical. If you're going to bring in millions upon millions of people in an incredibly short period of time, then naturally you're going to have to contend with perhaps a culture shift. Individuals from nations that aren't sympathetic to Western values, you're going to have to, in some sense, battle against that and try and integrate those individuals into our society. So I think that's what he was trying to hit out there. And what you mentioned about Kissin's comments, I think, again, that's absolutely right. I think people are more focused on the language choice and the actual underlying problem that exists. People are more interested in picking apart one element of your speech and saying, actually, no, that was wrong, and that gives me an excuse to avoid the problem that's actually in the underlying situation there. And I think it is utterly extraordinary that we get to a point where the Prime Minister takes time out of his day when he's battling for his premiership to release a statement and say Jim Ratcliffe should actually apologise for that. Again, it goes back to the disconnect, I think, between people and the political class. The political class think that, at least for a short period of time, is a more important thing to deal with than the actual issues of the day. It's a complete and utter waste of time. People are not interested in Jim Ratcliffe's comments receiving some form of apology, and my understanding is that he's done almost a half apology, which is, well, I apologise for any offence that I've caused, which means I'm not apologising for the actual thing that I've said, but I'm apologising because some people have read on Twitter and gone, oh, I'm a little bit offended by that. It's not really an apology. But again, the reaction, I think was the question. I probably would blame it on social media, people going through social media and other influencers on there starting to impose their influence upon young people and say that this is a terrible thing. And we know that young people by the polls tend to be quite radically to the left, and they're taking a liking to Zach Polanski's Green Party, the Green Party being remarkably tolerant of illegal migration. And I think any comments that sort of rub against that idea that illegal immigration is actually a perfectly fine thing, you shouldn't really bother about it, once those comments are uttered, then that natural rubbing against that is going to provoke a lot of left-wing young people into a strong reaction, and the belief actually that not only were the comments wrong, but actually the underlying issue behind the comments is wrong as well. So you almost get the conflation between them too, where you can't actually separate the comments and what he was talking about. You've just got to glue them together, and then every concern around illegal migration is actually invalid, and therefore we shouldn't talk about it. So I think there's a natural propensity to go on social media, and also an innate left-wing nature amongst our young people that means they have a visceral reaction like that.
So yeah, Dan, I'm thinking to myself that this whole kerfuffle is just flying way over the heads of regular voters that you meet day to day, because for the life of me, I don't really know. If you look at things from a Gramscian perspective, where the only thing that matters is controlling the narrative and making sure that the enemies of the common thing, that they are silenced, I can understand that, because I know how communists and leftists have been working since 1920. But I don't really think that the regular voters are caring a lot. I've seen, actually, it was a poll by The Sun where I think something like 90% people said, well, yeah, he was right. It was right. It is a problem that we have 9 million people that are on benefit, and people that come in and don't integrate into our culture and stuff. So I don't know, what is kind of the feel that you get in your local day-to-day campaigning?
Obviously, Johnny, the campaign, there are people who think that the mass numbers we are getting, particularly immigrants who are coming over and they're automatically claiming benefits. I've always taken the view is that if you come to this country, you stand on your own 2 feet. You do not, if you've not paid anything into a system, then you shouldn't be getting something out of something you've not paid in. So that's certainly been an issue with hard-pressed people in Gorton and Denton, is that some of the people I've spoken to are saying that immigration to an extent is bad, but immigration, they've been saying, we want the right immigration. But at the hustings earlier in the week, which I attended, the Advance UK candidate got absolutely berated by constituents in the audience that he made straight off the bat and said, multiculturalism has not worked. And he literally got, I thought constituents were going to fly over the table and gone for him. But so it's like a tale of two halves. In Denton, it's a very much aspirational white working class area, whereas Gorton, Levenshulme, and whatnot, there is far more higher proportion of immigrants, where I think up to depending on the wards, it's between 18 to 60% of the immigrants in those wards are unemployed. And it's obviously it's those of us here work. It's our taxes that are funding them, and a lot of people are getting, particularly on the Denton side, are getting frustrated with those who are on the Gorton side, as I mentioned, much higher, immigrant population, and it's trying to find that balance. So it's difficult. I'm finding that I'm telling people, obviously we need an adaptive immigration policy, people to come in here with those who work with a high skill set that have their own money, but we need to deal with the benefit claiming people who people come over automatically assuming they can claim benefits.
Yeah, obviously, I can put my own example. I moved to the UK in 2011. I already had a job, so I had a job offer from a media company in London. I went there, worked, I made a bit of career, why I earned more money and stuff. My brother Marco is still living in the UK. He moved in 2011. He had a job offer. He came. We took exactly 0 pence from the social thing. I don't think I got into the NHS. I didn't have a GP. So obviously I wasn't crowding anything. My brother as well. We had enough money, we saved, we paid our taxes, we did nothing. So we knew English fairly well. We've been very much in tune with British culture and British history and stuff. We've been Anglophiles most of our lives. So I would never say I was British. I'm not. I don't have a British nationality and stuff, but I was very much in line with British culture and everything. I did my cues. I wasn't expecting people to start believing things that I was taught when I was growing up in Italy. I knew that I was living in the UK and I was adapting to my culture. And people in my office, we had people from Germany, Spain, France, all over the world. They were very much in line. This is the kind of immigration that you want. People that were not exactly at the top of their game, but they were professional broadcast journalists moving to the UK, doing their job, paying taxes and doing this. If you come to the UK and you expect the street signs to be in your language and you expect cousin marriage to be legal and the NHS to stop discouraging people from that, I don't think you're the right kind of person that can fit in. I don't know, Alex, I know it's a really thorny issue and stuff, but I think we probably should have a conversation of which areas are compatible, because we've seen that Denmark has said if you get arrested and you got a 1-year sentence, you're immediately expelled. And if you had nationality, you would lose your nationality. And Sweden, and everybody in the UK say, we should do more like Sweden. Oh yeah, sure. Sweden is saying you need 8 years before you get the permit. You need to speak Swedish. You need to have a cultural compatibility stuff. So then you can go and become a Swedish citizen. Otherwise, you will not get a citizenship. You will still live in Sweden, paying your taxes, working and stuff, but you will not be a citizen. I don't know. It seems like a reasonable solution, maybe.
Yes, it's that old libertarianism and immigration argument that we've had a few times on the podcast. I enjoyed it when we had the Americans on a few weeks ago, and we always need to think about, at the end of the day, as libertarians, individual liberty. At the most base level, borders are a construct of the state and an infringement on the individual's right to travel. Equally, moving to a country and making use of the welfare state is an infringement on the rights of those people already living there. So it all boils down to, if you abolish the welfare state, the immigration problem solves itself. There is no reason why someone shouldn't be allowed to move to the UK, as you did yourself, and to make something of themselves. So if we withdraw the welfare state, then we would naturally see only people coming for the right reasons. And it's worth remembering that we have a significant number of white working class taking advantage of the welfare state as it is. So I would caution against the cultural argument. So, Dan mentioned that the Advance UK candidate said that multiculturalism has failed and was roundly, roundly booed for that. Multiculturalism is an interesting concept. I actually found in Gorton, one of the doors I knocked on, a Somali gentleman answered it in full Islamic garb. Forgive me, I don't know the actual name of the gown that they often wear, but full Islamic garb, and he said, "I'm voting Reform. I've decided. Please go away. Have a nice day. Reform." So, in that sense, I think that's the perfect example of multiculturalism in the UK, and cultural compatibility. When we start talking about that too much, I fear we start veering towards collectivism. Any form of collectivism, in my view, is a disease. Socialism might have more economic impact than, say, nationalism, but they are both diseases of the collective. There is a British culture, fish and chips, tea. Personally, I hate tea. I think it's a feeble beverage. I'll only ever drink coffee. I know I'm being a little bit.
You wouldn't have survived in my newsroom back in London. Oh my God, we Europeans with our coffee, we were frowned upon. They say, "Let's go have a cuppa," and I would say, "No, I'll have an espresso, thanks."
Exactly. So the cultural argument. We've benefited from various cultures coming to the UK, and my worry with some of the right is that they are combining this sort of cultural nationalism with social conservatism that isn't really necessary, and it's going to cost them votes with the young. People saying this is a Christian country, so they shouldn't have a mosque down the road. Statistically, this hasn't been a Christian country since the 1980s. No one goes to church anymore. Reform and Advance, I'm wary of them when they start bringing in these cultural arguments, because from a libertarian perspective, we don't care what your religion is, what you like to eat, what you wear, what language you speak at home, as long as you are not leeching off the taxpayer.
I know, Alex, but there is another issue that is actually very, very, very present. That is, once you go and you import people that have animus or actually hatred towards a certain group of people, that is a problem, because we have had to fight against anti-Semitism for ages. I mean, I come from a Catholic country. Catholics and Jews, they were very much at odds. You had ghettos and stuff, and they were invented in Rome by the Pope. So the Jews were allowed to be there. They were not allowed to have property. They were not allowed to have anything. They were dirty because they were lending money for profit, which was a big no-no back in the day. And our society evolved, and we're able to go beyond this hatred and stuff. And then you start importing millions of people who actually hate them, and they would like to kill them. And then it happens stuff like it happened in London, that if you go with a kippah on your head, you risk your life. And that is a problem, because they will say, yeah, British culture is not just tea and fish and chips, but it's actually the fact of saying that you are allowed to do your religion, but you are not allowed to ask everyone else to go with that. So when I see Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, that is making a big brouhaha about the beginning of Ramadan, the holy month for Muslim, much more than Christmas, I have a problem with that, because you're picking sides. And so I'm not really that. So Ralph, I was just wondering, in terms of saying this whole idea of British culture, it looks very esoteric. It looks like stuff that maybe people with university degrees and stuff that write on The Spectator and other stuff that they like to carry about. But is it really a problem? Because when I see someone that says I should marry my cousin and women should be in their kitchen and they will not be allowed to work or they will not be allowed to study, like it happened in Afghanistan. The Taliban government said that women are not allowed to study. I seem to think that this fellow is actually incompatible with British culture. And I don't really know. Is it just me, or is it something that young voters worry about or talk about?
No, I think that's a perfectly reasonable point. I think we've got to the position now where integration is incredibly difficult simply because of the volume of people that we've imported in. So ever since 1997, when Tony Blair opened the doors to an innumerable amount of migrants, we've got to a position where simply accepting that many people means that there is strain on the state. We've already had mentioned about the economic cost of it. And also, if we're looking at a cultural element, we're naturally going to see it becoming more and more difficult for us to actually integrate these individuals into our culture. That's why we used to, pre-1997, have sort of 30, 40, 50,000 migrants coming in every single year, because that was a manageable amount for the state to integrate into our country. We have to have some form of dominant British culture. There's a reason that people come to this nation. It's one of the greatest nations in the world. I absolutely love this country, and I'm so deeply grateful that I was born here. And that dominant culture has to persist regardless of who is actually in our nation. So we've got to make it unbelievably clear to people that are coming into our nation from other nations, be it France, be it Afghanistan, be it China, wherever it is, that actually we do have a culture in this country. And if you don't want to accept our culture, then simply, I'm sorry, it's not a place for you. We have to have an understanding between people in the country already and people that perhaps want to come to the country, that there is a culture that you must abide by. It is not, we're not going to be in a position where the place that you came from is what the UK is going to be. Simply taking the culture from Afghanistan, for example, and putting it into the UK is not right. There's a reason that you fled Afghanistan, and that's to come to the United Kingdom and the wonderful culture that we have. And I think over the past 29 years or so, we've got to the point where politicians are simply scared to talk about this issue. We saw this obviously develop in the most horrific of circumstances with the rape gang scandal, where police and local authorities were scared about talking about this issue for simply being called racist. We have to get to a point in our society where these are acceptable conversations, where actually we can raise concerns about mass uncontrolled migration, the economic, the cultural, the social cost it has on people, and actually say, no, we're going to take action. We're going to take action on that, because the best position we can be put in is having those low numbers, low and manageable numbers. That's not a dig against migrants. Migrants that want to come here and contribute, integrate into our culture, absolutely should be welcome, but we have to do that in a reasonable manner. And we have to look at the data that's in front of us when it comes to crime statistics, the statistics of migrants from particular countries that are more likely to commit sex offences, more likely to be dependent on the state. We have to make tough decisions. It's the reality of the situation where we have to say, if you're from that country, you're more likely to do this, that, or the other, and we have to take action against that. We can't simply ignore it in fear. As to the reaction for many of the young people, I think it goes back to the political parties that we, and that doesn't include me, but we as young people as a group support. That falls in line with the Labour Party and the Green Party. They again have been sold that vision that actually worrying about these things is being uncaring. It's being unfeeling about the people that are coming to our nation, making those tough decisions. You're actually being quite mean and nasty to the people, so therefore don't do it. And the vision that's being told by Polanski and the Labour left and the like is that we have to welcome everybody because it's rude not to, and everybody comes into our nation, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. And I think that is obviously built on a lie. But if young people go against that, then the accusation is, it's a horrible accusation in some sense, that you're racist, that you're mean, and you're just out to punch that immigrant neighbour that's come in the past few years. When actually we have to be honest about the decisions that we make, because if we lie to the public, if we continue to deceive them, then we're actually going to prolong the difficult decisions, actually going to make it even more tough for policymakers to make the necessary decisions. So I think young people need to start waking up to this issue. I think we need to stop being so gullible, being told by left-wing sources that actually being nice and fair is the best way to do things, when actually we've got to look at the data, we've got to be reasonable, we've got to make the correct decisions.
Yeah, I know. I think that there is another danger that is happening. Is the whole sectarian thing. I read recently that there was a mayor of a city. I can't remember. It's Colchester, maybe. I can't recall. And she actually was. The police came for her son because her son had actually sexual violence against a 15-year-old and stuff. And so she spoke to him in Urdu because she's an immigrant and stuff to say, just throw away your phone, because otherwise they will find out that you have pictures of you committing the act in the phone. And this is very, very representative of a certain culture that says that there is no individual guilt, it's all collective. So if you are found out that you have been doing a crime, this will bring shame to the community. And so the community just closes up, like the Pakistanis for the rape gangs. They were just saying, oh, no, this cannot happen, because otherwise, if they are found guilty, this will bring shame to the community. So I'm denying everything. I will not cooperate with the police, because this is a very, very bad slippery slope. Because when you start reasoning in terms of saying there is no individual crime, there is a collective crime, now you're just saying, okay, fine, all Pakistanis are rapists. And if this process goes on, it's very, very dangerous. And obviously you have Professor David Patt from the City London University in saying that a civil war is likely, because this is a very bad path. But I don't really know how to get over that, because if there is a certain community that thinks of himself as separate, as not part of the nation, I don't know how you integrate that. I don't know, Dan, is this a problem that is happening in the community? Because as far as I've seen, I don't really know the area. I've never been to your constituency, but it seems to be a very split. So it doesn't seem to be a very cohesive thing. So what have you seen in terms of that?
Yeah, the constituency is definitely very split.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there definitely is a split within the community, as Alex probably noticed when he came up and we were campaigning last weekend. Is that it's literally split almost down in the middle. So you've got like Denton South, Ribble, then obviously on the left you've got Gorton, Levenshulme, and so on. And it seems that in the constituency, the white working classes are being pushed out further into Denton, the outskirts of Manchester, and immigrants they're all predominantly Muslim, and there's a huge population of Asian people as well. But also in Levenshulme, there is a huge student population as well, student accommodation and all that. It seems that people of minority are, in Gorton, which is more closer to city centre or closer to Manchester Central. It is evidently clear that the segregation between your normal, I've got to be careful how I phrase this, your normal working class people who go about the day, going to work, paying their taxes and whatnot. Then when you go further into Levenshulme and Gorton, it's far more run down as well, and fly tipping is a far bigger issue, which people have told me is what frustrations people have spoken to in Gorton is that Denton is far better kept, whether that is down to the fact that it's predominantly white working people, but Gorton, it's so run down, fly tipping. When I was out campaigning middle of the week, I was literally seeing fridge freezers down the aisleway, and old, wet, soiled mattresses. And there is a clear differential between the two sides of the constituencies, not like adequately integrated. It's like oil and water with if I can't think of a better way of putting it. So there is that fundamental split. It's like a constituency of two personalities almost. It's I think there is some frustrations with certain areas of the constituency as a whole. Now, there is some frustration that people aren't integrating, or areas where I think Reform are trying, and Advance UK are trying to manipulate it, is that work on people's fears. Both Reform and Advance UK have been working harder in Denton and trying to pit Denton against Gorton, with the fact that I've bumped into a couple of Reform activists, and they're complaining about people in certain parts of Gorton not speaking English. Now, I've taken views that speak whatever language you like personally, but it's never bothered me. But certain parties on the right are trying to pit one side of the constituency to the other, and it's frustrating.
Oh yeah, I get that. But in order to do that, it's just the whole fly tipping area. So my brother Marco lives in the south of London, so it's Merton. It's not particularly a bad area, bad place, but the neighborhood where he lives, fly tipping is everywhere, and because there is social housing, so council flats and stuff. And I remember back in 1988, the first time I was in the UK, because I spent a few months up north in York in a school to improve my English. A very, very poor choice, to be honest. It took me years to get rid of the Yorkshire accent. So it wasn't particular. My parents didn't know any better. They sent me up because they didn't want me to go to Brighton so that I could have a good time. And so yeah, that was part of the plan. Because back in the late 80s, most Italians, they went up. So they went to Bournemouth, Brighton, Torbay, and so that they could go be by the sea, have fun. And my parents said, no, you're going up north so that you can learn proper English. And I said, yeah, cool, nice move. But back in 1988, that was unthinkable. To have fly tipping anywhere, it was unthinkable. And York wasn't a particularly rich area and everything. It was a very historic town, really nice, really pretty. But that would be considered unthinkable to have that. And nowadays, it's happening everywhere. So something has broken in the fabric of the country. Because I don't know if you've read, you remember the thing, the river in near Oxford, in Oxfordshire, that was completely full of rubbish everywhere. And it will take months to get rid of that. So this is something that has changed in the country, and I don't know why, I don't know how, but Alex, it seems to me that we are in a bit of a conundrum because we don't want to go down the whole us versus them, but I don't think that there is a balanced way to tackle this issue. It's becoming a lot more complicated because nowadays the message is clear: it's their fault. They're bad. They should be kicked out. And what is our solution to that? Because it's quite tricky.
It certainly is tricky. And the fly tipping, the littering, is a symptom of a nation in decline. On the cultural issue, I feel I may have come across a little left wing earlier, and now I'll probably get in trouble. I don't think all cultures, in terms of their attitude to things such as littering. I used to live in China. I lived there for about 18 months, and spitting commonplace. People walk out of their house on the way to the station and I think objectively that when those kind of practices are tolerated or considered to be the norm, I would say that a culture that frowns upon that is in some regard better. So, you know, Dan's mentioned that we've seen in Gorton, you know, the difference between there and Denton. We've talked about collectivism. You know, Luca, you mentioned the issue with that mayor in that town. What we need to do is challenge collectivism entirely. So we do that with a constitution, a written codified constitution that holds the individual to be above the state, rule of law and freedom of expression. And instead of having migrants swear loyalty to the monarch when they gain citizenship, we would have people swear loyalty to a constitution, one that puts individual liberty at the heart of everything we do. So what we need is strong application of the rule of law. And then we don't need to go too far down into the cultural argument. You mentioned the Ramadan lights in London. My view would be there should be no public spending on any sorts of religious festival of whatever faith. The issue is, though, you know, if, as Ralph mentioned, if you have huge numbers of people coming from more collectivist societies, you will see negative results. You know, I wouldn't want to live in Pakistan, where religious fanaticism is the norm, where women are routinely abused. I don't think it objectively is a place that I would want to live, and I would not like to see increasing symptoms of such a society in the UK. That said, the problem, and Luke, I think you hit on this on your question at the end there. What do we do? I would hit back at Ralph's suggestion that we look at statistics from different countries. While it may be true that someone from country X is X times more likely to commit said crime, you only need one individual from country X who is not a criminal, not that way inclined, and morally then restricting people based on their nationality becomes untenable. It becomes a form of collectivism. So we can't restrict people based on simply where they come. What we need to do is make it clear on their arrival that we are a country where you don't chuck litter on the street, where the rule of law and individual liberty is absolute, that your religion is something for your private life. You may believe what you want, but you should not be allowed to force your dictates upon others. But I know it's had positive effects in Denmark, but I fear the moment we start restricting people based solely on where they come from, that in itself becomes a crime against people from those countries who simply want to come here and make a better life for themselves.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Ralph. I was just putting you on the screen so that you can answer.
Oh, that's fine. I wasn't sure if I was unmuted there. I would probably hit back at that point on restricting people based off of country. I think we've just got to make cold, perhaps unfeeling type decisions about these type of things, that simply making it clear that those people can't exercise the culture that they were in our country, I don't think is enough. I think culture and the country that the person has come from are inextricably linked. I think if a country like Afghanistan thinks it's perfectly okay for women to be denied education, to be publicly executed, to be whipped behind the scenes or anything like that, that is not something we would be tolerating in our country. And I think we have to look at the data, we have to see what people from that nation tend to do, and we have to make decisions based off that. I don't think we can simply rely upon the good-natured element of people by telling them, actually, no, sorry, the United Kingdom is where you can't do that. I think there's a degree of determination, perhaps, from certain individuals that they're going to do that anyway. I think we've got to be stricter. I think we've got to make decisions based off that, and the country will be better for it.
But you still have individuals from those countries, you know, a women's rights activist from Afghanistan, for example, who is now chucked in the pot with, you know, the mullahs who are doing the very things that this individual is opposed to. I don't know what the answer is. I just fear that everyone in the same basket is a little.
It's a really tricky thing, because to say I've been subject to that. You know, most people tend to forget that Italians like me, when they moved to the US, they were considered just one tiny bit above people of African origin. And so if you went to the South, in New Orleans, there were riots, there were pogroms where Italians were continuously attacked and stuff. And this is why some of them, they chose to reproduce the collective form of security that became known as the mafia, because they were saying, hey, they're going to attack me no matter what I do. I'm a law-abiding citizen, but they were treating me very badly, so I will organize in order to defend myself, which then perpetuates the stereotype. So it's a really tricky thing. But in terms of saying, I come from Italy, I speak loudly. Yeah, that's part of my culture. That's what I do. But most people from Italy, they say that we are unable to queue. I've always queued in my life. And so, Italians, they like to skirt around the rules. They drive like maniacs. Well, I never had an accident. The only accident I had in London is because some idiot just opened the door while I was riding my scooter, and I just crashed into him. And it was his fault, not mine. So again, the whole stereotype, no, not really. It was a bigger one. It was a 400cc, a larger one. And, this is kind of the thing. I mean, I come from Pontedera. Piaggio is from Pontedera, so it's the town of the Vespa. So, of course, I had a scooter. But in terms of saying, stereotypes are really difficult. But in a certain way, they should maybe inform the law and the police and stuff. Now, profiling has been absolutely a big no-no. But in reality, if there is a Pakistani woman that shows up at a hospital because I fell down the stairs, maybe, I don't know, there should be a social counselor going there and saying, ma'am, is it really okay? Is something happening at home? And this is not racism. It's just the fact of this is the reality. Inside, family feuds and stuff, it happens a lot more. Family violence happens more in some communities rather than in others. And it's not racist to just see that. It would be racist to assume that this is what happens, but informing that, it shouldn't be a big problem. I don't know. Again, as I said, it's really tricky. And the tricky part is just condensing all of this in 1 minute so that it can go on TikTok, which is really very, very, very difficult. So again, thanks all for being here. So we have just a few minutes. I just said we wanted to stay under 1 hour. Obviously, we just went overboard. So I'm not even caring. So I would just like to maybe do a final roundup. So just Dan. Okay, election is 26?
Yeah, polling day is 26th of February. So it's about 10, 12 days away. So
So where can people follow you so they are aware of what is going on? If you have another canvassing session, if you have another public meeting, are you on social media and stuff?
Generally speaking, Facebook page, Danny D. Clark, or we've been doing a lot of advertising through our visual party page, which is obviously the Libertarian Party UK. I've been doing a little bit on my Instagram page, which is same name, Danny Clark. So they're the best places to find out. Is my 2 personal pages, the Libertarian page on both Facebook, Instagram. We do have a Twitter, well, still Twitter to me, but X account, which I can't keep up with what's what. So I still call it Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter to me, but I know a lot of these young kids, it's X. So yeah, we'll be doing some campaigning middle of the week. Last little push. So yeah, let's see how much we can get done.
Okay, lovely. Thanks a lot. So, Ralph, again, I said at the beginning that people can follow you, and is the young politician. So, again, is it just a website, YouTube page, anything? Go ahead. Where can people find you?
Yeah, we've got the Young Politician website. You can read some cracking articles from our wonderful contributors from all across the country. Young people's issues come first, but there are also some wider political issues there as well. You can go to the Young Politician YouTube page, drop us a subscribe. You can even watch our interview with Alex and Luca's brother, Marco, on there from a few weeks ago. And we've got some excellent interviews that are coming up. I've just lined up some wonderful guests that are going to be coming on as well. You can go to my LinkedIn page at Ralph Farrow. You can go to our Twitter page at the Young Politician. Make sure to follow everything we do. We've got some brilliant work that's going to be coming up, so tune in for that.
Obviously, lovely. Thanks a lot. Again, the leader of the Libertarian Party UK, now you can have a moment to just go there and say, what is bowling up? What is the party up to these days? Aside from, obviously, the by-election, which is going to be very important.
So it's full steam ahead on Gorton and Denton. So I'm going up on Wednesday. So Dan and I are going to do some more leaflets then. If anyone wants to join us, that would be fantastic. We are updating the manifesto in preparation for the May elections. We're also looking for more candidates. We've hit double figures on approved candidates so far across the country. So that's going ahead there. Just one thing, if I may, Luca, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to the Wagon and Horses pub on Hyde Road in Gorton, who hosted us last weekend. A true, proper English pub. They were so welcoming. They let us make base camp there for the afternoon. So thank you so much to the Wagon and Horses. If you're ever in the east side of Manchester, please drop in there. And follow the Libertarian Party on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that because I have absolutely no shame. If you can, just join the Libertarian Party, because every little helps, not just for Tesco, but also for the Libertarian Party UK. So just, if you can, donate, join, do that, because obviously it's not just a phrase. Britain's future is libertarian. It's just that a lot of people don't know that we are around and don't know that actually we can save this country just by letting the government do less and putting people in charge for once. So again, thank you all for being here. Obviously, the biggest thanks goes to everyone that has followed us. Again, this is just a very young podcast. We started a few months ago. We have been struggling to keep a schedule, but nowadays we should be able to have an appointment like this, possibly around 1 hour, again, 1 hour, an hour 15, hour 20. Plenty of interesting people coming up. Again, if you like that, please join the Libertarian Party UK website, the YouTube channel. Again, if you know someone that could be interested in libertarian ideals, thinks that, I don't know, without the government, who is going to build the roads and the money and everything? Yeah, just point our podcast to them, because obviously we think that talking about these issues is very important. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you again next Saturday for another episode of Give Freedom a Chance. Thank you all, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.